Berserkers were champion Norse warriors who are primarily reported in Icelandic literature to have fought in a nearly uncontrollable, trance-like fury, a characteristic which later gave rise to the English word berserk. These Viking champions would often go into battle without mail coats. The word berserk meant going into battle wearing only wolf or animal skins. Berserkers are attested to in numerous Old Norse sources. The Úlfhéðnar, another term associated with berserkers, mentioned in the Vatnsdæla saga, Haraldskvæði and the Völsunga saga, were said to wear the pelt of a wolf when they entered battle. Úlfhéðnar are sometimes described as Odin's special warriors. Men went without the mailcoats and were mad as hounds or wolves, but the shields. They slew men, but neither fire nor iron had effect upon them. This is called going berserk. Quote, in addition, the helm plate press from Torslanda depicts a scene of Odin with a berserker, a wolf-skinned warrior with the apparently one-eyed dancer in the bird-horned helm, which is generally interpreted as showing a scene indicative of the relationship between Berserkgang and the god Odin, with a wolf pelt and a spear as distinguishing features. Etymology. The name Berserker derives from the Old Norse berserker. This expression most likely arose from the reputed habit of wearing a kind of shirt or coat made from the pelt of a bear during battle. The bear was one of the animals representing Odin, and by wearing such a pelt the warriors sought to gain the strength of a bear and the favor of Odin. The element bear was sometimes interpreted as bur, meaning bear, which Snorri Sturluson understood to mean that the warriors went into battle bare-chested, or without armor, as men of Odin. This view has since been largely abandoned. Terminology. To go berserk was to hamisk, which translates as change form, in this case, as with the sense enter a state of wild fury. One who could transform as a berserker was typically thought of as hamram, or shape strong. For example, the band of men that go with Skallagrim in Eagle Saga to see King Harald about his brother Thorolf's murder are described as the hardest of men, with a touch of the uncanny about a number of them. They built and shaped more like trolls than human beings. This is generally interpreted as the band of men being hamram. Attestations. Berserkers appear prominently in a multitude of other sagas and poems, many of which describe berserkers as ravenous men who loot, plunder, and kill indiscriminately. Later, by Christian interpreters, the berserker was viewed as a heathen devil. The earliest surviving reference to the term berserker is in Haraldskvæði, a skaldic poem composed by Thorbjorn Hornklofi in the late 9th century in honor of King Harald Fairhair as Úlfhéðnar. This translation from the Haraldskvæði saga describes Harald's berserkers. The Icelandic historian and poet Snorri Sturluson wrote the following description of berserkers in his Ynglinga saga. His men rushed forwards without armor, were as mad as dogs or wolves, bit the shields, and were strong as bears or wild oxen, and killed people at a blow, but neither fire nor iron told upon them. This was called Berserkergang. King Harald Fairhair's use of berserkers as shock troops broadened his sphere of influence. Other Scandinavian kings used berserkers as part of their army of herdmen and sometimes ranked them as equivalent to a royal bodyguard. It may be that some of those warriors only adopted the organization or rituals of Berserkmannaband, or used the name as a deterrent to claim of the ferocity. Emphasis has been placed on the frenzied nature of the berserkers, hence the modern sense of the word berserk. However, the sources describe several other characteristics that have been ignored and neglected by modern commentators. Snorri's assertion that neither fire nor iron told upon them is reiterated time after time. The sources frequently state that neither edged weapons nor fire affected the berserks, although they were not immune to clubs or other blunt instruments. For example, these men asked Halfdan to attack Hardbeen and his champions man by man, and he not only promised to fight, but assured himself the victory with most confident words. When Hardbeen heard this, a demoniacal frenzy suddenly took him. He furiously bit and devoured the edges of his shield. He kept gulping down fiery coals. He snatched live embers in his mouth and let them pass down into his entrails. He rushed through the perils of crackling fires, and at last, when he had raved through every sort of madness, he turned his sword with raging hand against the hearts of 6 of his champions. It is doubtful whether this madness came from thirst for battle or natural ferocity. Then with the remaining band of his champions he attacked Halfdan, who crushed him with a hammer of wondrous size, so that he lost both victory and life, paying the penalty both to Halfdan, whom he had challenged, and to the kings whose offspring he had violently ravished. Similarly, Hrolf Kraki's champions refused to retreat from fire or wine. Another frequent motif refers to berserkers blunting their enemies' blades with spells or a glance from their evil eyes. This appears as early as Beowulf, where it is a characteristic attributed to Grendel. Both the fire-eating and the immunity to edged weapons are reminiscent of tricks popularly ascribed to fakirs. In 1015, Jarl Erik Håkonason of Norway outlawed berserkers. Gragas, the medieval Icelandic law code, sentenced berserker warriors to outlawry. By the 12th century, organized berserker warbands had disappeared. The Lewis chessmen, found on the Isle of Lewis but thought to be of Norse manufacture, include berserkers depicted biting the shields. Theories. Scholar Hildur Ellis Davidson draws a parallel between berserkers and the mention by the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII in his book De Ceremoniis. Orly Byzantini, of a Gothic dance performed by members of his Varangian guard, who took part wearing animal skins and masks. She believes this may have been connected with berserker rites. The actual fit of madness the berserker experienced was referred to as berserker gang. This condition has been described as follows. This fury, which was called berserker gang, occurred not only in the heat of battle, but also during laborious work. Many who were thus seized performed things which otherwise seemed impossible for human power. This condition is said to have begun with shivering, chattering of the teeth, and chill in the body, and then the face swelled and changed its color. With this was connected a great hot-headedness, which at last gave over into a great rage, under which they howled as wild animals, bit the edge of the shields, and cut down everything they met without discriminating between friend or foe. When this condition ceased, a great dulling of the mind and feebleness followed, which could last for 1 or several days. Theories about what caused berserker behavior include ingestion of materials with psychoactive properties, psychological processes, and medical conditions. When Viking villages went to war in unison, the berserkers often wore special clothing, for instance furs of a wolf or bear, to indicate that this person was a berserker and would not be able to tell friend from foe when enraged. Berserker gang. In this way, other allied would know to keep the distance. Some scholars believe certain examples of berserker rage to have been induced voluntarily by the consumption of drugs such as the hallucinogenic mushroom Amanita muscaria, massive amounts of alcohol. While such practices would fit in with ritual usages, other explanations for the berserker's madness have been put forward, including self-induced hysteria, epilepsy, mental illness, or genetics. Jonathan Shea makes an explicit connection between the berserker rage of soldiers and the hyperarousal of post-traumatic stress disorder. In Achilles in in Vietnam, he writes, if a soldier survived the berserk state, it imparts emotional deadness and vulnerability to explosive rage to his psychology and permanent hyperarousal to his physiology. Hallmarks of post-traumatic stress disorder in combat veterans. My clinical experience with Vietnam combat veterans prompts me to place the berserk state at the heart of the most severe psychological and psychophysiological injuries. In science fiction, the Berserker series includes space opera, science fiction short stories and novels by Fred Saberhagen, in which robotic self-replicating machines strive to destroy all life. These berserkers, named after the above-human berserker warriors of Norse mythology, are doomsday weapons left over from an interstellar war between two races of extraterrestrials. Bibliography.